Coming up at 6:30, the national and international news. But first, we join ITV Channel Television for a special celebration of the 70th anniversary of liberation.
Good evening and welcome to ITV News on Channel and this special Liberation 70 programme. On this very evening, 70 years ago, expectation echoed around the islands.
As news of the Allied victory in Europe spread, so did hope. Hope that within hours, the nightmare of the Nazi occupation would be over. Tonight, we'll be remembering Liberation Day 1945 through the eyes of those who lived through it.
Back to freedom, back to friendship and peace.
I'm in Guernsey where celebrations are already underway. Liberating forces landed here first in 1945 and I'm with those who remember it as if it were yesterday.
Tonight, hear from Liberation Square, stories of bravery, perseverance and ultimately of freedom. Stories that have shaped our islands for 70 years.
And our dear Channel Islands are also to be freed.
The words of Prime Minister Winston Churchill broadcast on this day 70 years ago. Words which signified the end of the darkest chapter in Channel Island history. Words which brought islanders cheering and singing into the streets, united in celebration. Hundreds, in fact, gathered in this very square to welcome the British troops who came to liberate them.
During the 5 years of World War II, the people of Guernsey and Jersey were imprisoned in their own island homes, the only place in the British Isles forced to live under German rule. But on May the 9th, that nightmare came to an end. It was a tough and long journey to get there, though. Families were divided, plenty of people starved, and many died. Tamsin Eames now has the story of how those bitter years tested the spirit of islanders.
Across the islands, the indelible marks of a harrowing half-decade remain. 70 years on, coastlines still scarred by Hitler's brutal oppression. A beautiful summer's day on the 28th of June 1940 turned into the island's darkest hour. The terror of the war in Europe finally reached our shores. German bombs bringing death and destruction. And the boots of conquering Nazi forces echoed through the island's streets.
The enemy had arrived and we didn't know what to expect. The first contingent of soldiers that came to Jersey were very hard troops. You know, they had been, if you like, educated by Hitler. We were imprisoned in our island with the enemy at the door.
It went round the town that the Germans had arrived, but it was then my mother said, well, I'm not going out, because she was terrified. She just didn't want to meet a German. It was a case of trying to reassure each other, oh, it'll only be 6 months, you know, and time will pass, so they should be all right. But there was always that back fear. What were they going to do?
I think the worst memory is the way they treated the prisoners of war that were here. They were terrible.
Those poor foreign workers, which we used to feel so sorry for, we couldn't help them at all. They were treated horribly.
The worst wasn't over. 1943 saw starvation.
It was getting harder and harder, especially for the local people and for the ones living in St Helier in town. They were getting very hungry.
The Germans wanted their food, and they would claim and take vegetables and everything away from the local population. So we children used to scrounge to see if we could get or steal anything from the Germans, really. Some died, I'm sure, of starvation.
But then there was hope. In May 1945, Germany surrendered. The heroes of Force 135 reclaimed the islands. The occupation finally over.
5 years of occupation, and then all of a sudden you're at peace. It's one of the happiest days of your life.
We sang Silent Cherie, of course, that was our song. And everybody we saw, we just loved and cuddled. We were just all so happy.
It was so pleasing that we were free at long last.
Well, here in Guernsey, the celebrations remembering that freedom are already underway. And it's like stepping back in time here at Beausejour. It's been totally transformed into a liberation tea party, with everyone celebrating to the sounds of the 1940s, of course, with some compulsory Guernsey gosh thrown in. And it's a chance for all those who experienced the occupation firsthand to really relive their wartime tales. Well, I'm joined by two sisters now who were there on that very important day when the Channel Islands were finally freed. So what do you remember most about that day?
The way the soldiers marched along the front, and every time they saw a child they gave us a bar of chocolate. We had 20 bars of chocolate that day.
And what do you remember about the liberating forces themselves when they came off the boat to free the islands?
They were terribly emotional, they really were. Some of them were crying, and they loved the children especially. They were just giving us things.
And what was the atmosphere itself like? What was the feeling like of being part of all this?
Well, it was absolutely electric. I mean, people just couldn't believe that it had actually happened, this day they waited for so long. I mean, the flags were up and everybody was really rejoicing, kissing each other and shouting. As I say, we children wondered what on earth was going on, really. It was just wonderful to to see all these soldiers and sailors coming in, and to know that something very amazing was happening. It really was.
Well, as we heard, those liberating forces were given a hero's welcome. But while their story is widely known, there's another from the very beginning of the occupation that many people don't know about, and that's about Guernseyman Hubert Nicol, Britain's first commando. Now, he was sent on a daring 3-day fact-finding mission to find out more about his island under German rule. Our reporter Rob Moore went to Guernsey's south coast to find out more about this dangerous kayak raid made on the orders of the British government.
If you do this and are caught, you are out on your own. You will be shot, and that will be the end of it.
With those words, Lieutenant Hubert Nicol, a Guernseyman, was sent to his occupied island. Carried by submarine, he alone would have to learn what was happening here.
They put the kayak together on the submarine as they were crossing over to Guernsey, and then suddenly found that they couldn't actually get it out the hatch of the submarine. So they had to dismantle the whole thing and recreate it once again once they were actually stopped and on the surface of the water.
You kind of feel military at that time might have been a bit more organised, might have had these things planned out a little better.
You'd have thought so, wouldn't you? But I think that thread runs throughout the whole story.
Ant Ford Parker has researched the mission, and today he's taking me out to see where the daring landing was made.
Hubert picked Jeanne because he knew it very well, being a St Martin's boy, but he hadn't been out on the sea in the dark before, so he actually found that when he was on the water in the canoe, they had a little difficulty finding exactly where the bay was.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, so he admits that all he did is he looked for the pole star, and he followed that.
So this is it?
This is the beach that he landed at, yeah. And This is not how it would look, obviously, because this is a lovely sunny day. He would have been in the pitch black.
After the war, Hubert married Barbara. She still lives in their home in St Martin's. She says he was the perfect choice for a reconnaissance mission to Guernsey.
The important thing was that he had connections at home. So if there was any information that they required, either administratively or within the parochial areas, he could get it. Also, he knew the cliffs very well, and he could swim like a fish.
While it may not have changed Guernsey's fate during the occupation, Hubert did return with valuable information, including the exact number of Germans on island. But he was sent back, and a second mission to Guernsey was less successful. The rescue vessel never arrived, and Hubert had to turn himself over to the enemy and was sent to a prisoner of war camp. But he survived and was back in Britain for Liberation Day. Still, it was his first reconnaissance mission to Guernsey, which saw him dubbed Britain's first commando.
And when you tell people this story, when you show them this bay, what's their reaction? What's the look on their faces?
I guess it's one of total bemusement that somebody could come up with such a loose plan so quickly and then execute it with such bravery, really. It was that, yeah.
It takes a certain kind of person and a real hero, really, to...
Absolutely,
to do
yeah.
it.
A real Guernsey hero.
A hero indeed. But you know, there were many ordinary islanders with heroic tales to tell, not least the hundreds of islanders of English descent who were shipped off to internment camps in Germany on the direct orders of Hitler. Katie Robinson returned with one of the last remaining Jersey internees as he went back to the place where he was once held as a prisoner of war.
Once echoing with the sounds of islanders' voices, it's been 7 decades since these German hallways were home to more than 600 internees. A prison to the men and women shipped away from their lives in Jersey for 3 years behind bars and barbed wire. Ordered to gather at the weighbridge, men, women and children were sent by boat to St Malo, and it was from there they started their 3-day rail journey to the Schloss. In carriages fit for cattle, they went from the port through Paris to the Belgian border. Then it was on through Luxembourg to the barracks of Biberach. Uprooted one final time and taken to the town where they'd spend the next 3 years of their lives. Bad Versac Schloss, now a grand, imposing castle in the centre of town. In 1942, it was a filthy and crowded place.
I believe it was Russian slaves they had in here, Russian prisoners of war and slaves they had in here, and it was in an awful state. I remember my mother saying when she opened the door of this room, the mess was horrendous. It really was. That upset her quite a lot.
For Tony Barnett, this was only his second time back, and a chance to pass on his own personal history to his children and grandchildren.
That's our room. That there was up there, yeah.
Only a 7-year-old boy when he first crossed this threshold, he decided to return to the castle to mark the 70th year since he and his fellow internees were set free by French troops.
My bed was over that in far corner, and Mum's bed. Bunk beds, of course, very low ceilings, that's why it was called the Rabbit Warren.
Corridors with a dark past that hold hopes for a brighter future. Now at school, the room he shared, almost unrecognisable.
You just cannot believe the white walls, clean walls, radiators, come on.
Seeing how it's changed, but some things stay the same, like the young friends who never made it home. Visiting the gravesides of islanders who died in the camp, drawing up painful memories.
And seeing them upset, and then I started to think about my mum and dad. I thought, oh, that was hard, that was hard, really hard.
A heartbreaking time, but a history this town and these people will never forget. The link between Jersey and Bad Versac still as strong as the tanks that tore down the barbed wire and brought these islanders home.
You're watching a special Liberation 70 edition of ITV News on Channel. Still to come before 6:30.
Kommen Sie her!
Through a child's eyes, foes, fortifications and friendship, we relive the schoolboy stories of islanders who grew up during the occupation.
And as we prepare for parties, parades and military cavalcades, I'll be telling you if the sun's going to shine on our Liberation Day celebrations.
All that and more after this very short break. Welcome back to ITV News on Channel and this special Liberation 70 edition. We're at the exact location where 70 years ago British liberating forces brought down the Nazi regime. Just after 3:30 on May the 9th, 1945, in front of crowds of celebrating islanders, the swastika was finally replaced with the Union flag, a single moment which signalled the end of 5 years of German occupation. Such a defining moment that it is recreated to this very day. And there's going to be members of the TA Cadet Force tomorrow who are going to be reenacting the role of the heroes from Force 135. One of them is Skye Channing. And Skye, what does it mean to you to be involved tomorrow?
Well, it's very special to me, especially because my grandparents were in the war. So tomorrow I'm very honoured to be in such a spectacular event. I'm really excited. It should be really fun.
Enjoy it. Thanks very much indeed, Skye. And the man who's got the honour of hoisting the Union flag right here tomorrow is the former Assistant Harbour Master Paul Mimack. And Paul, you've got a special connection, haven't you? A family connection to the Liberation.
Yes, indeed. My grandparents are here as well, right through the occupation, and it's a great honour to do hoisting the flag, and in memory of Captain Richmond and his team who are here through the occupation.
And special for you doing it on the 70th anniversary?
Indeed, yes. I did it last year just before I retired, but I was called back again this year to do it because other members of the team, they're involved with bringing the Iron Duke into the harbour.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. And these youngsters here know only freedom. That's what they've grown up with. But the people who grew up in the 1940s knew only the occupation. But they still have some fond memories of the acts of defiance, if you like, against the Nazi regime. And 7 decades on, we've brought together 2 elderly islanders, Leo and John, to relive the occupation through a child's eyes.
Well, when the war started, of course, I was only 3, but you were much older, 10. What did you think of the war then?
Well, I was 10, and my brother was older than me. He was 3 years older, and we've often discussed it since, and we said we wouldn't have missed it for anything. It was very exciting.
For myself, I knew nothing other than seeing Germans about, so it was just natural for me. So I had nothing to compare with what life could have been without them. So I was quite used to the Germans then.
We raided 1 or 2 bunkers, but this one, my brother decided to do it solo. Blackened his face and everything else, and took what tools he needed, and he avoided the guard, forced the lock, and went down the bunker and took the various things he thought were good.
Achtung! Jemand kommt! Bitte Sie sehen. Jawohl, mein Herr.
And he got back into the hotel, got up to his bedroom, took all these things off, looked at what he'd managed to get, cigarettes, chocolate and so on, for us in the morning, and suddenly realised he'd left his penknife in this German underground bunker with his name clearly inscribed on the side.
Oh dear.
So he had to put on all his stuff again in the early hours of the morning and go along and open up the padlock he'd managed to fasten and get down without being caught and back home again twice in the same night.
That's lucky, isn't it? Towards the end of the war, we needed news, and people were producing little crystal sets and hiding them in various ways. And some people did get caught and got shipped off. But Dad hid his in the telephone. Clever idea. One switch was phone, the other switch was listening to the news. And one evening, these 2 very smartly dressed German officers came up to the house.
We have come to search these premises. Let us in.
So he called for me. Little blonde-haired chap looking like a German kid, so down I came.
And, oh, yes, this is your son, yes, nice kid. Dad, would you like a drink whilst you're here? And I said, yeah. So he got the stuff out. It was a wonder it stayed in the bottle, it was so strong. And I think it was made from apples or something. And they liked it. They said, oh, this is good, strong stuff.
Das ist stark. Das ist gut.
Have another one. Yes, they did, and they were talking about things. And in the end, these two officers got completely blotto on this stuff. And they decided they had better get back to base. And I remember seeing them going down the path, hanging on to each other, no hats, completely sozzled, to the extent that the next day they had to send one of their soldiers up to the house to collect their smart hats. But they never did search Dad's house, I'm very pleased to say, and relieved.
We could see this German unit, and the sergeant who was training them suddenly stopped, and he turned with his big gloved hands behind his back. Kommen Sie her! So he said, good, and he was reaching up with his hand, gloved hand, never taking his glove off to undo this little button on his uniform to get this tube out. Now, when we saw it come out, we thought it was round-free gums. But of course, we were well aware that the Germans would make poison sweet for children, because we'd read all the things in the Dandy and the Beano before the war about what the Germans would do to children when they got them. So we put the sweets in our mouths, rather like a hamster does. Go to school, he said. As soon as we were out of sight, we had those sweets into the drains, spitting. We thought we'd let down the whole of the British army in Ireland.
Well, it seemed to have gone by very quickly, but I'll never forget the occupation.
Some amazing memories there, but you know, those two men weren't the only ones to defy Nazi orders during the occupation. Many people hid illicit objects such as radios, food and Union Jacks. But imagine trying to hide a car from Nazi eyes for 5 years. Well, believe it or not, that is exactly what some people did. And joining me now to tell us a little bit more about that is historian Ian Ronayne. So Ian, how exactly did people hide their cars?
Well, you know, these were remarkable times and people were very resourceful. They didn't know what was going to happen, they were unsure, so I guess they used ingenuity and they found a place to hide it. And if you were living on a farm, perhaps you had a spare barn, or you could put it behind some potato boxes, or even cover it in a haystack. I understand people went to great lengths to hide their cars.
And how risky was this? What would have happened to people if they were found out?
Well, in the early days, it was more about making sure the Germans didn't requisition their car. If you had a Pride and Joy such as these we see around us now, the last thing you wanted was somebody taking it off you. As the war went on, it became increasingly risky, and the Germans were more concerned with who had cars and who had potentially access to cars. So then the risk went up. If you were hiding a car and the Germans found out about it, you could get in trouble.
And on Liberation Day, it wasn't like these cars were just driven out triumphantly, was it?
I guess not. You can imagine after 5 years of covered by hay or hidden in a barn, they're going to be in a pretty poor state. However, I imagine as an act of defiance, the guys who owned these cars, the people who owned these cars, well, perhaps they went out of their way to get them working, get them up and running and back out on the streets again, just to prove they weren't defeated.
Fascinating stuff. Ian, thank you so much. Well, these beautiful vehicles will tomorrow be forming part of a parade in Jersey. And of course, the annual cavalcade in Guernsey is the event to go to on Liberation Day. So we sent our weather presenter Sophie there, and she is with some very excited young islanders.
Well, yes, Jess, the excitement is really building here in Guernsey. Even I've managed to dress up to get in with the enjoyment of the situation. Obviously, Liberation Day is tomorrow, but we've got a huge cavalcade that's arrived here at Beauchamps High School. Everyone seems to be getting in the spirit of it and enjoying in, climbing in the vehicles. I'm joined by some of the students here. Which one is your favourite?
Well, I think this one, because it's come all the way from Switzerland.
Switzerland? Well, you know all your stuff, don't you? Having a great day?
Yeah.
Looking forward to tomorrow?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, the organiser of this momentous cavalcade is joining me now. This is Paul. Paul, what's so special about this cavalcade?
Well, this year we've got the largest military contingent. We've got 135 vehicles, really in honour of Force 135 that liberated us. We thought it would be nice. And they've travelled from all over the place: Switzerland, France, Holland, the UK.
Well, they're certainly drawing in the crowds here at the school today. Just remind everyone, what time does the cavalcade start tomorrow?
We're going to leave the Vaugirard campsite at 2 o'clock and then aiming to be in town and parked up by about 3:30.
So you're clearly hoping for more of this lovely sunshine.
Yeah, definitely sunshine, and certainly no rain.
I'll tell you what, let's take a look at the forecast. Needless to say, back in 1945, this was very much the situation. Some good sunshine, but also temperatures about the same as now, but it was also dry. So let's take a look and see if that rain is going to hold off. Here's your forecast.
Sitting comfortably, it's time for the weather. ITV Channel Island weather, sponsored by Regency Bedding.
Well, I've pulled away from the really big excitement. I'm joined by a few of the students here, but I'm going to wave goodbye to you now because we're now going to look at the forecast for tonight. Well, temperatures probably reaching lows of 11 degrees. There's certainly a lot of cloud around, but we are seeing the winds start to pick up overnight into tomorrow. So tomorrow, Liberation Day, for Guernsey in particular, it's going to be very blustery, but the good news is there's only a very small risk of a little shower. So probably a light raincoat is the best thing to take if you are heading out to the celebrations. As we go into the afternoon, there will be some sunny periods across all the islands, and in fact temperatures reaching highs of up to 17 degrees, UV index of 5. On the water, the sea state is moderate to rather off in the north of the area. Sea temperatures 12 degrees and high tides are between 10 and 11 o'clock. The next 5 days sees increasing temperatures, but the good news is it should remain essentially dry with lighter winds. Chloe's helping me with the summary. A great day to come tomorrow. With luck, it's going to stay dry too.
ITV Channel Island weather, sponsored by Regency Bedding.
Well, with luck, we'll dodge any of those showers that do reach the island. There's sure to be some sunshine, so I hope we don't need any of these canopies. But whatever island you're on, it's sure to be a momentous occasion, and I do hope you enjoy it. Thanks, Sophie. So a mixed bag then weather-wise for those heading out to celebrate this weekend. But if you do want details about what's going on across the islands this weekend, then you'll find all you need on our website. Itineraries, maps, you'll find it all on itv.com/channel. We will, of course, be bringing you bulletins throughout the weekend. Plus, don't forget our special programme on Sunday night. It is Liberation 70, The Islands Remember. That's on at 10:35 Sunday night.
But for now, that is about it from all of us here at Liberation Square, on the very spot where 70 years ago the island's liberators came, and this statue was built to symbolise the joy of a newfound freedom. But it isn't just remembered through monuments and reenactments, it's alive in the hearts and minds of the island people of today. And as the decades go on and the number of people dwindle, it's important to remember the true spirit of liberation lives on.
And our dear Channel Islands are also to be freed